So today what we're going to be looking at is definitely a review of things that you've done in the past. Lines and equations of lines are things that you guys did in algebra, if not before. So the slope is something that we should be familiar with. The slope, if you need the formula, you're doing the difference of your y's over the difference of your x's, or rise over run. So as you're looking at this, you have -4 minus 0 over 3 minus minus 6. So you get -4 over -3, which will then simplify to be positive. Now keep in mind, we could have flipped those. In other words, we could have done 0 minus a -4 and then 6 minus 3. Again, you would have ended up with the same answer. You just make sure that you flip the top, you also have to flip the bottom. So you have to be consistent about which point you start with. When we look at the next thing, we're now transitioning into what about the equations of the line? So we're taking it one step further. So again, we're going to be using those same points, but rather than going back and forth between those two slides, I'm just going to copy those 2 points down for us, including we already worked to find the slope, so we don't have to do that work again. Reminder that the point slope form is y minus y1 equals, and then you have m, and then the quantity x minus x1. So the big thing is, in order to do point slope form, you need just that, the point and the slope, which we do have. So the y is part of the equation. Since we have y1 here, we can do it either way. So we can use either point. I'm going to use this point to start. I don't know why that didn't just do red, but it is what it is. There it is. So y plus 4 equals our slope, which was 4/3, and then x minus 3. That's an acceptable answer for your point slope form. If we had used this point instead, it would just be y. Since it's minus 0, it doesn't matter. We don't need the 0. And then 4/3, and then the quantity x minus 6 if we use that equation. Either one is acceptable. You don't need both answers. When you look at slope-intercept form, for most people, it's going to be easiest to start in point-slope form, given our equation, and then work towards getting slope-intercept form. So for example, if we were using this equation that we started with, we would have y plus 4 on the left. We would distribute the 4/3. And now to finish solving, we can go ahead and subtract to get y by itself. Because reminder, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And so we have y equals 4/3 x minus 8. And that would be the same thing if we were to look over here in the purple. When we distribute that 4/3, we would get 4/3 x. 4/3 times a -6 is just -8. So either way, you end up with the same slope-intercept form. Okay, so when we look at horizontal versus vertical lines, for me, I'm a picture person. I always like to kind of visualize what's going on. So if we look at the point 3, -5, it's going to be somewhere down in here, 3, -5. Horizontal is going to be going this direction. So the biggest thing that people have been kind of thinking through and kind of been talking through in the past is that it's going to cross my y-axis at -5. Therefore, the equation is y equals -5. The other way to think of this is, if no matter where I'm at on this line, I'm always going down 5 units. So the down is our y coordinate, 5 units is that part. So it's y equals -5. It's not right or left, otherwise that would be an x. It's up or down, so that is a y. So as I'm looking at the second one here, what is the equation of the vertical line through 5, -1? 5, -1 is going to be over here. Vertical is up and down. So again, it's going to cross an axis, but this time it's crossing your x-axis at 5. But again, if you need to think through it further, no matter where you're at on that line, you're going right 5 units. The left and right is our x value. The 5 is there. Okay, so what I'm going to have you guys do is go ahead and pause your video quickly and figure out these answers, and then I will go ahead and put the answers up. You can click play and then check your work through that. So your slope for number 1 should be 8. Your y value is, in this case, is going to be -15. And then the equation in slope-intercept form for part 3 here is y equals -1/4 x plus 4. Okay, so again, that's just a little bit of extra practice for you. So if you need a quick recap here, your slope formula we already wrote down earlier, but this is kind of a one-stop slide as far as your formulas. And then your point slope form is y minus y1 equals m quantity x minus x of 1. Slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. The only other one we haven't talked through yet, which isn't used as often, but it is ax plus by equals c. And just a couple things. Oops, sorry, that's standard form. Plus c equals 0. That's general form. A and b cannot both be 0. And then the other thing, just A is usually not positive, or sorry, usually not negative. So it is usually positive. Sorry about that. Got kind of mixed up in my words. Okay, so those are just some kind of criteria, generally speaking. But again, we don't use general form a lot, but I do want to go through one example just for practice. So if it says find a general line, or excuse me, find a general form equation for the line through these pairs of points. What you want to do is you want to start with finding your slope. So we're going to start with the slope, and we would have -1 minus a -8 over, and then you would have 4 minus a -3. Once you simplify that, you get 7 over 7, which is then just 1. What I would recommend is then go to a point slope form, okay, because that's what you have right now. You have the slope and you have a point. For this example, I'm just going to use the first point. You would have y plus 8 equals our slope, and then x plus 3. Remember, those are pluses because technically it's minus a negative at that step. So we would have y plus 8 on the left. When we distribute, obviously it just stays x plus 3 because we're distributing a 1. Subtract the 8 out of there, and you would have y equals x minus 5. Now, right now it's in slope intercept form. Okay, so to get it to standard form, basically we have to get everything on one side and set equal to 0. So I'm just going to subtract the y, subtract the y. So we have a 0 equals, and I'm going to make sure that this is in the form we need, x minus y minus 5. And so we could have either that 0 on the left or the right, but that would be your general form equation for that line. Okay, so again, all we did was just move everything to one side. Okay, the other piece that I want to make sure we review is parallel versus perpendicular. Reminder, parallel means that it's going to be the same slope. Perpendicular means that it's going to be the opposite. Reciprocal. So remember, opposite just means that you're changing its sign from positive to negative or vice versa. Reciprocal means you are flipping the fraction. Now, notice your equation that you start with up here is not in slope-intercept form. So the first thing we want to do is get it that way. So we're going to subtract the 2x from each side, and we're going to divide. So y equals -2/3 x. We would also divide the 12 by the 3. So you get -2/3 x plus 4. Okay. Now, when you look at this, again, we are looking for number one, parallel. So we're going to be using the slope that's exactly the same. Okay. So you have the slope, and then you also have the point. So you have the point up here, you have the slope here, and we can just go ahead and plug it in to slope or point slope form. So y minus 1 equals our slope of -2/3 and then x minus 3. And notice it doesn't specify what kind of equation we need, so this is enough. If you wanted to go ahead and distribute and move that 1 over to get it into slope-intercept form, you would end up with y equals -2/3 x plus 3 if you did it in slope-intercept form. Same concept for number 2. The only difference is our slope is the opposite reciprocal. So what was originally -2/3 turns to positive, and that fraction flips to get 3/2. But again, we're going to be using that exact same point as we did in part 1. So we have y minus 1 equals 3/2 and then quantity x minus 3. Everything else stays the same. It's just the slope that switches out. Again, if you wanted to do slope-intercept form, you could distribute and simplify, so you get 3/2 x minus 7/2 if you were to go that route. Okay. The only other thing that I want to make sure that you are aware of is you may see some word problems. And guys, please don't be intimidated by word problems. I know it's easy to be so. So when you look at this, the key is you want to look for keywords. So like per year, that's going to tell you that that's a rate, and a rate is just the slope. So when it talks about write a linear equation giving the value y of the building in terms of the years x after the purchase, again, this is a rate, and a rate is a slope. Okay, so I'm going to just write this up here, and I apologize, my handwriting is a little sloppy. So your value y is equal to your slope. So notice it says depreciates. Depreciate means it's going down, so it's a negative 2,000. And then again, that's the slope, so it's going to be multiplied by x. And the value originally was $50,000. So that's your initial value. Again, just so you guys are aware, you guys can absolutely switch out these two things if you want. It's just that we're used to seeing that in that slope intercept form. But if it makes more sense to you that it starts at $50,000 and then goes down, that's fine. Notice it says, in how many years will the value of the building be $24,500? That's going to be our y. So $24,500 equals negative 2,000x plus 50,000. And then you're just solving. Okay. And so rather than taking a bunch of time to talk through that solving bit, you end up with x equals 12.75 once you solve. And then you could even convert, this is going to be 9 months of a year. So 3/4 of a year is 9 months. So 12 months, or excuse me, 12 years and 9 months if you want to be super specific. And again, if you have 12.75 as an answer, unless it specifies, it says like years and months, that's sufficient, and you have the correct answer. So, okay, guys, hopefully that's enough of a review for you. As always, ask questions whenever you need it. Thank you.